Live abroad with kids? Can you slow travel with kids? The answer is yes. However, I'm gonna be real honest with y'all and let you know that I have this many children, which is why I am so excited to be joined by a woman named Jenna today, who is going to be talking to us about her journey slow traveling / living abroad in Mexico with her kids, homeschooling, giving birth abroad, all of the things. I'm so excited about this topic because people ask me all the time about traveling with kids, living abroad with kids, and the fact of the matter is I don't have the experience because I do not have children. So I'm so excited to be joined by someone who's going to be able to share all of the details, her experience, and I see that she's already here. So let me go ahead and let her in. Y'all already know how IG do, putting us in that little square and whatnot. Let me get over here. And then once Jenna is in, and there she is.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, nice to connect with you. Thanks for inviting me to chat.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining, Jenna. I really appreciate it. Y'all, me and Jenna literally met right here on Instagram. So I love getting to connect with new people this
Same
way.
here. I feel like I have so many online friends now just from Instagram. Even with a
Yes.
small following, it's just so great. And it's nice to meet like-minded travelers and moms and things like that. So
Yes.
thanks for inviting me to chat.
Yes, absolutely. So let's go ahead and kick it off with who is Jenna? Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what's happening in your life before we get into all the things with slow traveling in Mexico.
Sure, totally. So I am originally from Canada. I moved to Mexico, I'm gonna say 8 years ago now almost. I came to Mexico for the first time 11 years ago. On a girls' trip, my first trip actually outside of the country without my parents, like as a kid. So it was like a girls' trip. We did like the resort package, the whole thing. And I actually met my now husband there, but also like a group of friends. Yeah.
You met your husband on your very first
Yeah.
trip to Mexico?
At a
Wow.
resort, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And a bunch of friends, still friends with a bunch of them. Um, so yeah, it's a small world. We ended up becoming best friends, and we're just friends for a long time, like 8-hour phone calls, and would go back well, FaceTime, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, he was like my best friend. We knew everything that was going on in each other's lives, like through other partners, through like all of life's twists and turns. And ended up going back to Mexico year after year kind of thing, visiting Mexico in Cancun and then Guadalajara. And through that ended up, I was working actually in a different field at the time. So I was a child and youth worker. I was in school. It was my second, like it was a postgraduate program. And I was just really burnt out. I was either working in school, studying, like I didn't feel like I had no life, and I was really burnt out. And yeah, it was just like the grind of like living. Yeah, it just there was no end. It was like being on a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And I actually came to Mexico to visit my parents who were snowbirds at that time for a few months of the year. Came down, visited them. My now husband, who was just my friend, came and stayed. We just like had a March break trip, and I ended up feeling so burnt out, flew home, and had so much anxiety about going back to my life and like the busyness of just jam-packed days. I was like, I can't do it. And I ended up dropping out of school. It was my last semester graduating, quit my job. Yeah, and I had met this person who was had created like a drop shipping store and was like very successful when I was in Mexico.
Yeah.
And ended up like kind of like diving right into that with one of my friends. We started this like little online boutique store, which was short-lived, but it still was like some little way and some type of motivation to like just book the one-way tickets.
Yeah.
Ended up moving to Cancun, Mexico, yada yada, and never ended up leaving.
Wow.
So I ended up, yeah, having my kids both in Mexico. And I went back for a little bit to Canada through COVID, and then last year spent 10 months there so my daughter could do a year of kindergarten.
Yeah.
But never ended up going back. And being in Mexico, I ended up getting a permanent residency here through having a kid here. So yeah, so there's two ways you can do it. You can either do it through getting married, or you can do it through having a child here. So I did it with having my daughter. And even with that, it doesn't give you a visa to work, like without having go through an additional process. So I was technically able to stay in Mexico, but had no means of making a living.
Yeah.
And I just did the Google how to make money online. My background was obviously in psychology and child and youth work, so not something super transferable like to a remote career. And I had a friend who was remote working on Upwork at the time, and this was back in the day where you actually had to apply to get into Upwork. You couldn't just like go make a you had to apply and you had to be approved to be on the platform. Now anybody can just go and it was a time. So I ended up getting invited through a job that she had to connect with to get me into the platform. And I started working remotely through there as a freelancer and ended up just falling in love with remote work, digital marketing, and just kind of tumbleweeded into now having like a full career where I'm a director for an agency that I got through that first position and that first opportunity. So now I'm like a remote working mom, but also homeschooling my 2 kids. And this year we took the plunge and we're kind of doing a full-time travel situation. Our condo finished the rental. We've closed the rental agreement. Our contract ended, and we were like, why renew when we can just go rent place to place? And so that's kind of what we're doing now. And it's been a whole lot of fun. So just exploring Mexico for the time being.
Oh my God. First of all, just what an incredible story. I mean, and so relatable to so many. Like, we make all these jokes on social media, like, oh, when you have to come back home from the trip. And I'm like, y'all, we should not be this depressed and go back to our everyday lives. And
serious.
I know so many people can relate to going somewhere, like traveling and having that feeling of freedom, that feeling of possibility, recognizing, oh my goodness, there's so much more to life than just working working day in and day out. So the fact that you took that courageous leap is, it's not a small thing, because honestly, so many people feel like this every day. And I hear it all the time, like, oh, like you're living my dream. And I'm like, y'all, I'm not living anybody's dream but my own. Like, you can dream all you want to, but it's a whole other thing whenever you actually decide to take that leap and make the decision to do it.
Totally. Yeah, I know.
I remember I was gonna ask you about how you started traveling, but you kind of already went into that. And for anyone who's been following me for a while, I don't know how many times I have raved about Mexico. I mean, it is my favorite country to this day. I keep waiting to go somewhere else, and I'm like, okay, this moves to number 1. Nah, like 24 countries later, and Mexico is still my number 1. It's such a great country. I mean, the people, the food, the culture, like the fact that there's so many places to go in Mexico, and you go to these different places and they all have their own little culture. So I'm always happy anytime I see anyone living their best life in Mexico. So talk to us a little bit about the parenting aspect of this. So again, people ask me all the time about, like, can I travel with my kids? Can I move abroad with my kids? Is this even possible? What would I do? What I want to start off with is from like a mental perspective. How did you even get to a point where you were like, you know what? I'm here and I'm going to have children here and I'm going to raise children here, because I'm assuming that was not an easy breezy decision to make.
I know, it's crazy. It's like so hard to even go back to that time, but I feel like I I fell in love with Mexico, with the people, with the culture, with like the family parties, with just like the tiendas, like when you go to your local tienda and just like getting to know them, they feel like they're extension of your family.
Yes.
And making friends in Mexico for me just came way easier than I even felt like it was in Canada, and everyone says hi to you when you're walking by. Anywhere you go, people will talk to you. Even with my kids now, like you're standing in the line at the grocery store and people are like making a conversation. They're so open and like talking to them in a very kind, interesting and interested in what they're doing kind of way. And I think that Mexico really feels and even felt like back then like it was my second home,
Yeah.
and I just felt so welcomed. Even now, like when I go back into Mexico after like traveling somewhere else, the first thing they say to me is "Welcome home," like in Mexico, and it's just it really feels like that. Like it feels like an
Yeah.
extension. And so I feel like the one thing that I also hear is people's concern with like the medical side of things and hospitals and the medical care. And I will say that I'm so grateful for my experience with both of my kids, having both my kids here. I had them both in the private hospitals and had the same OBGYN for both of my kids, including both of them had some complications, especially my daughter's. Um, I technically had 3 C-sections, like as of right now with both kids, which I can talk about later, but just some like more serious medical, I don't know, it's a little scary, it's nerve wracking, especially as a first time mom.
Yeah.
And I felt like the confidence that my OBGYN had, and just, it gave me the confidence and feeling so comfortable with everything. So I think I got really lucky. Definitely like shopping around for hospitals is a thing here. Shopping around for doctors is a thing here. So you really have the opportunity to choose what your birth plan is, what you want it to look like, and what you want your experience to be, which I really appreciated. They never took my child away from me to put them into, like the nursery when they're first born. Like I had my baby with me the whole time. So definitely getting to that point, I think I was already felt like Mexico was my home,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like a going joke in my family. And like since the first time that I went to Mexico, I used to always say like I am in Mexico. You say yo soy mexicana, and I used to always go around saying yo soy mexicana with all of our Mexican friends. So it's been like a long-lived joke that they're like you're honorary Mexican because you just like
Yes.
took it on so much. So I feel like traveling there first, I get so many messages from moms too who are like considering moving to Mexico. They're thinking about taking a family and homeschooling in Mexico. And I definitely think like traveling there first is a great idea.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, every place in Mexico, it feels like you're going to a whole different like place. Like
Yeah.
there's just it's so different. Like we lived in Puerto Vallarta. Right now we're in the Riviera Maya, and it just like the one from the other, it's interesting because it's like, oh, I really appreciate what I took for granted in Puerto Vallarta, things that
Yep.
I kind of overlooked that now I really appreciate, and vice versa, or wherever you go. So I think traveling to the place first, and like reaching out in Facebook groups. I know I have moms reach out to me all the time asking questions, and you can get like some good understanding of like what's available and accessible to you, even like as you start homeschooling, what types of programs, what types of groups, meetups, activities for kids, things like that. I think like Facebook groups are a great place,
Yeah.
and social media is a great place to go with that too. So sorry, I feel like I went on, and maybe we have to
No,
go
it's
back to
all
the
no,
original question.
this is all such great information, and I love that you are validating things that I say all the time. As far as, first of all, using Facebook groups, I'm like, y'all might feel like Facebook is dead, but I'm telling y'all, get in them groups, okay? Especially when it comes to travel, living abroad. Like, I mean, I can't even, the amount of information, the amount of amazing people, the amount of events that I have gone to, just like specifically from Facebook groups. I mean, and whether we're talking about traveling or like living abroad. I mean, I have planned entire itineraries based off of information that I have gotten from from Facebook groups. And the idea of traveling first, because oh my god, I tell people all the time, I'm like, y'all, don't let these people on social media gas you up, okay? Living abroad is not for everybody. It is not. I'm like, I don't care what nobody
Yeah,
tells you. I don't care how sexy they make it look on social media. It is not for everybody. In my opinion, it does not make sense to uproot your entire life and just go somewhere, especially if you're not someone who is at least somewhat well traveled,
yeah,
right? Like if you haven't traveled outside of resorts, outside of cruises, if you don't know what it's like to walk outside your door, you look left and right, nobody speaks the same language as you,
yeah,
you don't have your Publix right there.
yeah.
You don't have, like your car. Like it's a completely different scenario. And Mexico, for example, we were in Merida. We flew into Merida at the end of February, and then we ended up going to Monterrey. And I'm telling you, it was just, when I say it was so different, I was like, are we in Mexico? Like it felt like a
Yeah.
completely different vibe. And like you said, being in Monterey made us recognize the things that we really loved and appreciated about Mérida. And
Yeah.
then we went back to Mérida. We're like, oh my God, we're so happy to be back, which we were. But there were a couple of things that we were like, oh yeah, that was in Monterey. They don't have that here. And I think that's one of the cool things about seeing you go to these different places because, ultimately, I mean, obviously I know you already love Mexico, but getting to experience these different cultures and have these different experiences, meet these different people, all of these are going to help you make even more informed decisions as you guys continue on this journey.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is like with travel, you have kind of like an open door to do what you want. So for us, Mexico is a season of life, but
Yes.
we might end up in Europe. We might go
Hmm.
back to Canada. We could, it's really an open door. So I think also going into it, which was a little harder for me a couple years ago, I feel like, but it's really this past year, I just feel like, wow, we can do anything we want. You book the
Yeah.
one-way ticket. Obviously, there's like visas and different things that require some research, but once you kind of like pack your stuff into a suitcase, at least right now, we feel like everything that we need is right here. We could
Yes.
just, like, the world is your oyster. You can go anywhere you want. So even if you choose, Puerto Vallarta, which was like where we've lived for a long time, we were like ready for something different. We were ready to see new parts of Mexico and then the world. So it's just like travel is such a blessing. And we were telling our daughter the other day, like back in this day that we're speaking of right now, in her schooling, we're like, they didn't have planes back there. Like you couldn't travel from there to Canada. So
Right.
what a great blessing it is that we have the opportunity to, go and see the world.
Oh my
Where
God.
isn't that crazy?
Oh my
Like back.
I mean, the world, you said it, the world is our oyster.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why I'm constantly encouraging so many people to just get on the plane because once you do it, it's like, I mean, they say like, you can't unsee things, you can't unhear things. I'm like, once you start traveling, you are like, I can book a flight anywhere. I
Yeah.
can go
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. Like, and the US isn't going anywhere. Canada isn't going anywhere. Mexico isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
We have what, 190 something countries on this planet.
Yeah.
Y'all, we got to get out here and we have to see it. And for the people who are like, "Oh, but I have kids." Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you absolutely have options. And let me get some context really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
How old are your children?
Yeah. My daughter is 6. She's going to be 7. And then my son is 3.5. So they're like 3-ish years
Okay.
apart. Um, Yeah. So my daughter's in grade 1 now. My son's preschooling. But for us, like education and like learning is just an all day thing. Which if we go into homeschooling, I don't know. I think every homeschooler and every parent does things differently. And you kind of like do what works for you and what feels right for you. But yeah.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that you went back to Canada so your daughter could do kindergarten there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about like that
Yes.
decision?
Sure. Yeah. So my grandmother was also really sick at that time, so it was kind of the other motive for it. But I grew up going to Montessori school I'm from Ottawa, Canada.
You said
So
Montessori.
Montessori, yeah,
What's
it's
that?
like a style of learning. It's like a style of learning that's a little bit more open ended. So you have like a little bit more choice in what you learn, but you're learning more tactile in a more tactile way with like beads and like there's specific. Tools that kind of help learn different things. So you're learning like the anatomy of a flower through a puzzle, and you're learning just a different
Ooh.
style of learning. Yeah, and I went there as a kid, and I loved it. To this day, I say that my Montessori years were some of my favorite life lived years, and
Yes.
so I loved it so much. And Emmy did junior kindergarten here in Mexico, and so we kind of had a discussion of let's do like 1 year in Canada in kindergarten. And at the time, we had been talking about in kind of the process of moving back to Canada, partially for the education reason. And so we went back to Canada. It was actually just myself and the kids because my husband's immigration process wasn't ready yet. So just myself and the kids went back, and we put Emmy into a Montessori school there. which she has always had like a huge hunger for learning, and she's always just been like interested in school to this day. Still talks about school all the time. Um, and so she did her school a year of kindergarten there, and while it was great for certain things, it was there were problem areas for us that actually opened the door to homeschooling, and really is what we said, this just doesn't feel like a fit. And I don't think that it was like Montessori school in and of itself. I think it was
Right.
just education, and it's also like a telltale of like how my experience was in kindergarten, and my Montessori experience wasn't the same necessarily experience that she had.
Mm,
And I would say that I want to say too that like the issues that we had through the school year weren't related to the education or the teachers. Like, it was so wonderful. She loved all of her experiences, but it's really the social side of things. And when you put your kid in school, you open them up to learning about things that are outside of your
right.
control. And so there were just certain instances that are things that we've had to work through as a family, just not expecting that she would, I don't know, have those experiences or learn those things. So
Yeah.
that was kind of our experience. So the choice for us to move there was for education. We had toured a bunch of the schools in Puerto Vallarta, and nothing felt like the right fit for us. I also have a friend who was a speech pathologist she's Canadian, but she lived in Puerto Vallarta and was my friend she's still my friend, but we were close friends for the years that we lived together
Yeah.
in Mexico. And so I learned a lot from her, and she's been a great resource. And also just like the community, we actually had like an in-house homeschool teacher that actually came when I was in junior kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
We met her through I had heard about her through a Facebook group actually, but somebody
Naturally.
had introduced me. Yeah, so so just kind of like through discussions and like going to see the different schools, they just didn't feel like a fit for us. And so we decided to do that year in Canada, and decided that for us, homeschooling just is more of a fit for what feels comfortable for us. So yeah.
What I love about that is what I'm hearing is you're not you're not shying away from trying out the different things, which I feel like is such a huge part of travel, living abroad, slow travel, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is being open and recognizing that you can have this great idea of I'm going to go here and it's going to work out and it's going to be just like this, and then if it's not the way that you wanted it, if it's not what you want, then you can go do something else.
Yeah.
I am constantly preaching, y'all, flexibility. Flexibility. Just be flexible, and you would be surprised at the opportunities that show up for you. You'd be surprised at how rewarding life can be if we stop acting like we all live in these boxes. I'm like, we are the ones putting ourselves in these boxes. So, and I can imagine that. I don't know for sure, obviously, but I can imagine that, deciding to go back to Canada and, enroll your daughter in public school again. Like, I know that that's one of those things where, you can say it, but I know there's a lot of stuff that went into that mentally, physically, emotionally. But the fact that you went and you did it and you were like, you know what, this is not the vibe we want. Let's go back here and let's try something else. And even looking at the schools, and I'm actually just curious. I know you said, did you look at some schools in Puerto Vallarta and none of them really aligned? Was that more so because of the schools? Was it because of like what you felt like you needed for your
Yeah.
daughter? And I'm throwing this out there as someone who has no, what's that expression? I have no skin in the game. Okay, I don't know. This is why I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I guess for us, well, I'll say for my daughter, when she was younger, she spoke Spanish. She learned Spanish. She watched like any TV shows that she watched was in Spanish. She was like exposed a lot more, and we spoke more Spanish to her. And as she got older, it really converted to English. We were back in Canada for a year of COVID, and so just being surrounded fully by English, she really reverted to only speaking English, and more than anything was not interested and like refused to speak Spanish or like have anything to do with Spanish. And so the idea of putting her into school, which already felt scary for her and for us because she's never been to daycare and she'd always been with me, the idea of like putting her into a school was nerve wracking for her for it to be in another language. There's obviously schools that they do bilingual. So we had looked at some schools where it was like half in English, half in Spanish. And a lot of it was like stories that we heard from friends that just made me nervous about if something was to happen, is somebody going to like call me to let me know that this happened? And I will say I'm like a little bit of a control freak. So I feel like it more than anything, it was really nerve wracking. The idea of putting her into school caused so much anxiety for me. It's scary when you're with your child all day, every day since the moment that they're born. It's scary to like put your trust into somebody else that you don't know.
Yeah.
This is like, no matter which, this is for me, my experience, no matter which country and which school, it's, for me, it's scary. It was scary. And so we looked at a couple different schools. I know another school that we had looked at, my friends had shared that like a lot of it was iPad, like you learn like iPad learning, like on a tablet, which just didn't feel like a fit for us.
Right.
And so yeah, we looked at the schools, and one of them was even a Montessori school in Mexico, and yeah, they just didn't feel. It didn't give me the comfort, I guess, that I needed to feel comfortable putting her in a school. And the other, I will say too, like my husband's Mexican and I'm Canadian, so there's a lot of conversations that happen because what's not comfortable in my eyes, I'm also in a different country, so it's a different language. I speak Spanish, but it's still different for me than for him. So it's nothing against any one school. It's really just what felt comfortable for me as a mom, I guess. Yeah.
No, and that makes perfect sense. And obviously homeschooling has worked out. So talk to us a little bit more about homeschooling. Like when exactly did it start, and how is it, well, let me say, when did it start? How did it start? And are you the one who's doing the homeschooling, or are you still having someone else?
We do it ourselves, with my husband and I. We homeschool together. Part of the joys of like flexible working, remote working, both being in the same boat, is that our days can be really flexible. And I think homeschool in general is so flexible. You could literally homeschool on the weekend, and you can. So it's like whenever you want, right? So we started, I guess Emmy was technically junior kindergarten, as it would be in Canada. And we had somebody come to our house who would do like activities. They would go on nature walks. They did like arts and crafts. It was never like a curriculum, sit down and do this math page. It was always like about fun and just learning things. They would walk to the bookstore and get a book, and it was more just for fun and to have kind of like some childcare certain hours, but in like a more like learning centric way. So we did that, and then after last year, I guess I'll also say that I love YouTube. It's like one of my favorite channels to consume on social media, and so I had gotten in many years ago when Emmy was like 1 onto YouTube vloggers that were sharing their stories of like homeschooling, and so it kind of opened the idea to me then. And then last year, after we had done the year of kindergarten, we decided we were coming back to Mexico. We wanted to reunite our family. I had already like been exposed to a lot of the different materials and the different curriculums, and so that kind of helped. But again, just went deep into researching. We're following technically like a certain number of subjects. The books are actually from Canada. And so we do a certain number of subjects every day. And my son's in preschool, so we're really just doing like preschool, like he's learning numbers, and it's more just like activity books and things, But my daughter is following like technically a grade 1 curriculum that we just put together ourselves. So it was like this curriculum looked, aligned with what we thought would be good. And there's so many out there. Like we were just discussing, what are we going to use next year? Are we going to go with the same book, or should we try a different one?
So do you just kind of, so did you just kind of like do research and compare different curriculums compared to like what is taught in like a regular school, and then you just choose the one that you felt was best?
You pretty much, like, this is like grade 1. Like this is a grade 1 spelling and vocabulary book. So like she just has to do this to be considered having done grade 1 for vocabulary. So it makes it so easy. It's like, it's really like, this is her math book. This is book 2. She has 2 math books that she has to do to complete grade 1.
Yeah.
And then we'll supplement with like she's learning fractions right now. So we were like, it's a little bit, you know, we wanted to do some tactile learning and just to understand like the concepts more. So there's so many great printables. Like she did like this flower one where it's really just coloring the like 1 out of 8 petals. Like different fun things that you can do. We had pizza the other night and we were like, okay, you've eaten 1 piece of pizza. How much of the pizza have you eaten? And it's just, you're like learning as you go, right? So we use like a certain curriculum for certain subjects and then a different curriculum for different subjects. The subject is like science is different than the other ones, and we just put together what like looks great to us. There's so many YouTube videos out there where they literally walk you through the books and walk you through the curriculum. There's so much online, like blogs, and so it was really research, and it's so fun to learn and be a part of like choosing your child's like learning. Yeah. It's really fun. And honestly, all of her subjects that she does, we do homeschool for like an hour and a half a day. That's how long it takes us to get through. It's like 2 pages of math a day. It's crazy when you think about it. It's so flexible, and and she's getting she's doing all of the same work that somebody would be doing in a class. We do our own like, you know, arts and crafts like you would do in school. We do our own like outdoor activities the same way you would do in school. We read our own books. So it's just the day of school that is like 6 hours for a normal kid is just compressed into an hour and a half, and it's easy when it's just the 2 of you sitting beside each other. You can answer every single question. It's, you know, not one teacher to 20, 30 kids that has to like make their way around the room to help. Right. So it's really fast. It's really fast. And then any type of interest that she has, we like supplement. Like she was interested in plants, like from this chapter that she did. Now we're watching a video on plants. Or she was looking at red blood cells. Now she's watching Magic School Bus, the episode where they go inside a Ralph and those like the red blood cells. So like she's like interested in something, and then we just, you know, go learn more about a specific thing. And when you're traveling, you are literally soaking up so much. Like, you know, she's at the pyramids, she's at art museums, she's at like learning things as we go, like doing a little like city tour, learning about different sites in Mexico City. She's learning about things as she goes. So it's just, education is forever going. I mean, I'm learning every single day in my job, and like the you know, marketing emails that I get sent, the ads that I'm served. Like you're constantly learning, courses, webinars, like you're always learning, social media, right? We're all learning from each other. So life is education.
And I assume that, and I mean, you tell me, because I know you mentioned that a lot of moms reach out to you, because I was going to say, I would assume, like, is that a concern that they have? Like, I mean, I hate to be all technical and say like FAQs, but like, I know you mentioned that like a lot of moms reach out to you. Like, what are those questions that are repetitive? Like, what is it that because I'm sure there are things you hear all the time, whether it's a misconception, whether it's a specific question, a concern, like what is it that people are constantly asking you about as a mom who's doing this, and they're looking back like, that looks so cool, but insert.
Sure. Totally. I guess one question that I get often is, you know, when you're doing homeschooling, the piece of the puzzle that really is missing is the social aspect. So how do your kids like learn socialization? How are they like making friends? And so the question I often get, at least when we were in Puerto Vallarta in the Facebook groups, were like, what types of activities are there for kids? Like, are there homeschool groups? Is there like homeschool programs that you can do? And I know I can speak to Puerto Vallarta, I guess, because that's where I've lived the most, but we had like there's a homeschooling group, Facebook group, and there was like meetups all the time. Not even before we were homeschooling, there was like mom groups, and we used to do like play groups basically, and every couple weeks you would be at a different mom's house or at like a little play place, and beach meetups. And so you're socializing like that way. Plus for us, like we're at the beach every weekend. Our kids make a new friend on the beach like every single weekend, or like we went to a water park on the weekend and they both made a friend. Like Enzo's 3, he's like, you know, watching little kids communicate is just adorable in and of itself. But like there's always a way to socialize. Emmy was interested in dance, so we put her into a dance program, and you can pay per class. It actually ends up being like cheaper in some cases when there's so many holidays in Mexico. So
Yeah.
you're paying per class. We go and we pay our couple hundred pesos, and she's now doing the dance class. They have toddler dance classes. They have music classes. They have like library meetups. There's lots of soccer. There's so many different activities, right? And I'm sure it's the same no matter where you go, really. Maybe different in like smaller pueblitos, but there's so many activities for kids. So that's one of the questions I get all the time. The other question, I guess, is like documentation and like how do you, like if you go back to Canada, like what happens if you want to put your kid back in school. And I know that in Mexico, at least, homeschooling is not really regulated. There's not really like, if we lived in Ontario, we would have to send a letter to the province and the education sector and say like we're choosing to homeschool. But for our own purposes, we have like, I mean, the workbooks themselves, and we have like a little Google sheet that we just keep track of like what we're doing, and we save the work, and we'll have that like if we decide to go back to Canada and put her back into a school program. And for education in terms of like post-secondary schools and things like that, there's like a misconception that those children that are homeschooled will not be accepted into universities and colleges the same way that if you went like regular mainstream schooling. And it's a misconception. Like you do testing and application the same way, really. So those are really like a lot of the main questions I would get. It has to do less about the school itself, the classes, like the work itself, and more about the like education, the outside of the education, the socialization, the stuff like that. But it's all possible, and our kids don't have any issue like making friends. And the best part for us too is that we get to be together all the time, and we spend so much time together. It's like they're my best friends, all three of them, you know. So it's great.
And I love that, again, it coming back to not only the flexibility but the possibilities, and recognizing that things don't have to be done one way. And I think this is such a challenge whenever it comes to our mindsets, because most of us were raised like, this is what you do. You go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you do your 9 to 5. I mean, and even, I know like we're talking about kids, but I mean, even adults who cannot wrap their brains around not having a Monday through Friday job. Right. And earlier, whenever you were talking about the drop shipping, which just, and I have also dabbled in drop shipping. It also did not go exactly how I wanted it to go, but you have no regrets, and you recognize that, again, like we were saying earlier about how when you travel, you're like, I can go anywhere. When you start dipping your toes in all these little things, it's just the universe is constantly like, yeah, you can do that. You can do that too. Or you can do that. Like parents are reaching out and being like, oh, well, without school, how will your kids be socialized? And I'll be honest, like that's a question that I would have as well. So like hearing you talk about the communities, and it makes sense to me because as someone who has traveled and have been in the groups, I see people all the time like, hey, I have a daughter who's this age who wants to meet up. Hey, we have a group for moms if anyone wants to join. Like these, I mean, I don't join because they're not for me, but these are things that I see happening. So I love that I love that you're showing other people what is possible, and even looking like at your page, like I just love seeing all the little like games and stuff that you have with kids, because I know that's something that I've even heard like, oh, well, how are you keeping your kids busy? And I'm like, y'all, how are you keeping yourself busy? What you talking about? Kids are, I feel, more easily entertained than adults are.
Honestly, we have like toys and stuff too, but they like my daughter just went out to the backyard and she just like harvested a bunch of sticks and she made a stick bouquet. And we were like, amazing. They like go to the beach, they use plants and coconuts, and they like create all these different things, and they have a blast, and they're using their imaginations, and it's awesome. We obviously have like, you know, activities, and like when you're on the road you can buy things as you go, but kids are amazing. They're so resilient. They're sponges. They create things out of nothing. They're like, we built this fort like with like pillows. Like they use what they have. It's amazing. And yeah, so we're having a blast doing it,
Yeah.
and it's really fun.
And we can learn a lot from them with that creativity, like just
Serious.
allowing them to create naturally instead of trying to force them to learn a certain way, trying to force them to
Yeah.
be a certain way, just allowing them to go be wherever they are and then decide to explore these things on their own. I think those are the kind of things that it's kind of hard to see until like they get older, but as an adult you can look back and recognize like how different things could be for you if maybe you or me if we had more scenarios where we were truly free to be creative the way that we wanted to be creative without someone telling us, oh well, that's not the right way to do it,
Yeah.
or there's only one answer to there's only one solution to this problem, there's only one way to answer
Yeah.
this.
Totally. Yeah.
and
Agreed.
And I know that we have obviously talked about a lot of the amazing things, but I do also have to ask about the challenges because y'all know
Yeah.
we like to give that 180 view, okay? So
Mm-hmm.
as far
Totally.
as slow travel, living abroad, homeschooling, what do you feel like is like what have been some of the most challenging things that you have had to deal with?
Sure. I will say the one thing that is like on my biggest con list is like being away from family. It's hard. And with kids, like their birthdays. So like we're traveling right now, and my daughter's birthday is coming up, and trying to figure out what we're gonna do for her birthday is like a conversation. It's kind of like, do we go back to Puerto Vallarta just for the birthday? Do we like trying to figure that out when you have kids and holidays and things like that. Um, when it comes to travel itself, I would say, and so my husband's Mexican and I am Canadian, very lucky because when it comes to renting a car, when it comes to dealing with anything, he is like in Mexico, he's like, our leader
Yeah.
for a lot of those things. And my husband's actually traveled all of Mexico, and so he knows every single state. He's kind of our little tour
Oh
guide,
wow.
but he also has had lots of experiences with being in different places. The things that make me nervous or things that I'm weary about because I've never been somewhere. Safety, he's always the one that's able to say like, look, this is how it is. It's just totally safe. You're not going anywhere that's a hot place.
Yeah.
And so he's really been like our guide for those things. There's definitely times where you feel like you got a worse price
Yeah.
than others.
Yeah.
Even for him as like a Mexican person, it still happens, to him in certain situations.
Yeah.
It's just like different. It's a different place where, regulations of certain things are different.
Right.
So it's just part of it, like bargaining for something is just part of how it is.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy that part of it. I'm like not a confrontational person. I don't like, and I'm like, what do you want me to pay for this?
Honestly, in the US, it's very similar. Like, we
Really?
are raised that, like, you do not negotiate, you do not haggle. And
Yeah.
when I started traveling, I was like, oh. I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is, I'm just gonna say gringo, gringa,
Yeah.
okay? Like, you're gonna overpay for things. Like that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I feel like it's one of those things that you accept, but it's also one of the I think it's one of the really important things about understanding a different culture and recognizing that this is part of what it is. And whether we agree, whether we don't agree, whether we're comfortable or uncomfortable, it's like, okay, but this is the culture. And then, at the end of the day, we get to decide how we want to proceed. There are some things I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever, you got it. I don't care. And then there are other things where I'm like, traenta. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, no. It just depends. But every scenario is different.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so true. I love that. The other thing too that just came to mind was, and I feel like it's just part of traveling is like you're learning as you go. So like we come into situations. For example, we got pulled over by the police last weekend or the weekend before. We got pulled over by the police. the police here are like felt it was a different vibe than like Puerto Vallarta.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of have to like you learn through the situations that you're in. Even as like my husband, who's a Mexican, we still learned something new. And I think this is also where social media is so great to kind of educate yourself. But we didn't know that there's an app where we have a rental car here.
Yeah.
There's an app in Quintana Roo that you can download, and if you get pulled over by the police, you're basically registered, and you show them this QR code. And for like minor things, like we just backed up on a road on a one way or something like that, you just show this to them, and you kind of get like 2 free passes. Like you don't get a ticket 2 times. And we kind of were there for like an hour dealing with the situation, like kind of be like, yeah, give us the ticket, whatever, until we had to call the rental company, and they are the ones who told us about this app. So like we didn't even know about that. We just kind of like we're learning as we go.
Yeah.
Didn't do research about like how to rent a car in Quintana Roo. To be honest, we just assumed it was the same as like any other place.
Yeah.
So part of it is just like really like learning as you go. And I mean, it's great to learn as you go, because I don't know, you're in the situation just like kids when you're like learning to teach them something through like the pizza that they ordered.
Yeah.
It's like we'll always remember that, and it's like something new that you learn, but also just learning how to deal with those situations. I feel like it's like personal growth and personal learning that we do. And I think having a partner to do it with is really great, because my stress is like he's the calm, and there's moments where it goes back and forth. So it's kind of fun, but there's like obviously hiccups that come with anything. Lost luggage, the Airbnb cancels on you. There's always going to be those little types of things that happen. We went to an Airbnb, and there was like issues with the roof and mold, and we had to leave, and like trying to find a new month-long stay. Like there's always these like things that happen, and our like motto is like it's all part of the adventure, and we always just try to say like this is a great story that we'll have. Like this is just like have fun through it. Like right now we're homeless. Like it's just you have fun through it, and it's just part of the adventure. And that's just with the outlook we try to have with like all of the hiccups that come with travel, no matter where you are.
It's all part of the adventure. Me and Mel, my husband, adopted this mantra last year. Whenever we would find ourselves in a moment where we were just like, this is not what we thought was going to happen today, we would just be like, this is travel.
Yep.
This is travel. Like and it's funny because it's literally gotten to a point where, because and we're human, like we all do it sometimes, but when you're spiraling and you're like, you're trying to pull it back, but you're just so over it. And like I've learned that just having this mantra has helped me so much from spiraling. Like even in the moment where I'm like, I feel like I'm going to just like choke something, I'm like, this is travel.
Yeah.
And this is the life that we chose. I mean, oh my God, the Airbnb. We had to flee 2 different Airbnbs last year, both that we had booked for a month. And you can't make it up. Like, I tell people, I'm like, y'all, there have literally been times where it was the night before and we did not know where we were going to be staying the next day. And people hear that, and I get it, because I've had travel has humbled me, okay?
Yeah.
I've been a very type A personality kind of girl. My moon is Capricorn. I am like structure, plan. And then travel was like, nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't care about your plans. Oh, you had plans?
Yeah.
Oh, you thought you were going to stay here? Oh, okay. Oh, you thought this Airbnb host was going to be helpful? All right. Oh, you didn't. Oh, you thought you weren't going to get in that Uber and the tire was going to go flat?
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
yeah.
It happens.
It does. It's part of the adventure, honestly. It's travel, like you said.
Yeah.
But there's always a way through it, There's always, sometimes you're just you're getting to the beach 2 hours later than you planned.
Yep.
Sometimes you're not going to the beach anymore. You're doing something else.
Yep.
But like it's just life, and it's fun. The pros always, they outweigh those hiccupy things. So yeah,
It
It is
does.
what it is. You roll with the punches. And I think like for us too, having kids, like I think that's the other thing. I know my dad was like one who like took a little while to come around to the whole concept, but now he's just like, this is the best. Your kids are just like living their life. You're teaching as they go. Right? They're like, why has the police stopped us? And now we're teaching them, you know, well, this is the rule of the road, and this is what happens, and this is the consequence. These are
Yeah.
consequences to actions, and they're like literally learning things as they go and picking up on things, and they'll be like, well, remember that thing that you did last year? Well, this is this, and you know, they're little sponges. They're picking up things as they go. So
They're building resilience, and they're building their flexibility muscles. Like
yeah,
they're building their confidence. Even what you were saying earlier about the personal growth, that's something that I love to hear, because it's one of those things where it's kind of hard to explain it. It's like you feel it, but it's really hard to put it into words. But you truly feel yourself growing as a human. Like you feel yourself becoming more confident, more resilient, more open-minded, more empathetic, all of these things
mm-hmm.
that come from travel. You don't even got to try and do anything crazy. I'm like,
No,
just travel. I'm like, you don't, like, people who are like, oh, I want to have a crazy travel story. I'm like, all you got to do is travel. Trust
just
me. I'm
yeah,
like, it'll happen.
they'll
Like, you
find
don't
you.
don't go looking for it. It will find you.
Literally so true.
Yeah.
They're just the best stories too.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah. Jenna, this was so great. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Yeah,
We really, really appreciate it. And for the people who want a little bit more, tell us
yeah.
if you have anything going on, where we can find you, all of that.
Yeah, sure. My husband and I are actually launching a website. It's theganthebest.com. I just put the link in my bio today. It's still in like build mode, but you can still subscribe to the email list. And our first email just tells a little bit of our story and what we're doing. And we're going to be launching a guide to remote working. And this is something that I'm super passionate about, because my career that I went to school with, university, college, is not what I'm doing today. And it's totally possible for anybody who is interested in going remote, in finding work that is not in the field that you're in right now. All of your strengths are like, you can pick those up and put them on your resume, and you can find a job based on like all of your strengths. It's totally possible. Yeah. You're learning as you go. And so my guide's really about that. It's helping learn about Upwork and how to create your profile and how to find new work remotely. And I built a little like workbook to go with it to help you kind of do that.
Yeah.
So that's launching soon, and anybody who subscribes to the email list gets it for free, and you'll be like the first ones to know and try it out. So we have that. We're also working on some cool resources for families, games, and downloads for kids. So we have like a travel bingo, and we're actually working on little printable packets for the different places that we go that kind of teach history and like learn about like Tulum and the pyramids and things like that. So that'll all be available on our website. And we're also working on a YouTube channel. We filmed our first video on Sunday.
Yeah.
So trying to get that live, yeah, so you can follow that. And then all of the things homeschool, I actually have another channel or another Instagram page called The All-in-One Mom. And so I try to share like a lot more of the homeschool stuff there.
Yeah.
Just for any of my fellow travel gals and guys that are not parents and interested in the homeschool stuff. So yeah, I hope that's kind of where you can find me.
Yeah, no, you have some really great things going on. We'll have to talk more offline, because even like with the remote work stuff, like these are questions that I get all the time. And I'm happy to give like a verbal overview, but I always love being able to share other resources that do that have more of that deep dive, right? Like I mean, I'm not a Jill of all trades. I'm like, this is what I'm good at, but I'm like, if you want me to pass you along to someone else who's an expert in this field, then absolutely. We'll have to maybe in the future we can do another live and specifically talk about the remote work aspect, because it honestly is the number one question that I get, is like, how would I even make money? Like how would I do this? And I'm like, y'all, it's 2025.
Yeah.
Like come on. We gotta expand our mindsets.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also so overwhelming if you go and Google how to make money online. Yeah. You are gonna get thrown with like so many different things, and there is so many different amazing ways you can make money online. Like drop shipping is still alive, UGC, like there's so many, avenues. So also I try to like talk on my avenue that I know, which is like freelancing, and now like I've landed like a full-time contract, like making more on an hourly wage than I would have if I just stuck to my original career. So
Yeah.
it's totally possible, if you go into it with like commitment and like a desire to learn and grow. And yeah, I'd love to chat more on it because I'm like very passionate about like helping people like go remote when you're interested in doing that.
Yeah,
So.
we'll have to, yeah,
Yeah,
we will for
yeah,
sure do that.
sounds good.
Thank you again,
Thank you so
Jenna. I
much.
really appreciate you
Yeah,
joining us, sharing all the information. Y'all, please make sure, whether you're live or whether you're watching the replay, make sure you connect with Jenna, get on her email list, follow her, all the
yeah.
things, and we'll probably be back at this point because I already know that I need to know more. So,
Anytime you want to chat, travel, homeschool, Mexico, I'm there. I like love it.
yes.
Yeah, hit me up in the DMs. I love to chat always.
All right, let's do it. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining. We'll catch y'all later. Bye.
Bye.